Hey everyone, we're just going to give about a minute more to let everyone trickle in and join us today. All right, looks like we've got enough folks to get started, so here we go. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first Aia New Orleans Symposium for Climate and Equity. My name is Kelsey Wotilla, and I'm one of the founding members of the Aia New Orleans 2030 Committee, and I'm joined by Aia New Orleans President on the panel today, Terry Hogan-Dreyer, and my colleagues Aaron Donovan and Javier Marcano, who will be helping field questions throughout the presentation today in the Q&A box. A quick note, today's presentation is being recorded so that it can be made available to you attendees for future viewing. I'd like to thank and welcome each of you both personally and on behalf of the AIA New Orleans 2030 Committee for joining us today. We're proud to present our four-part series throughout November for the symposium Rising Climate on Climate and Equity. It is presented by Woodworks, and we'd like to thank the Woodworks Wood Products Council for their sponsorship of the event, as well as Nano Architecture and Interiors and Huseman Associates Consulting Engineers for their support of the event. As I mentioned, Rising is a 4-day symposium series throughout the month of November, in which architects can engage the profession and their communities when designing toward a more resilient and equitable future. The AIA New Orleans 2030 Committee started with a small group aligning with the current AIA New Orleans President, Terry Hogan-Dreyer's ambition to get local firms signed up for the 2030 Committee and quickly recognizing the web of architectural influence between climate and equity. Throughout the 4 days of the symposium, our program will attempt to connect these conversations among and beyond architects. Today, in day one, we're focusing on urgent and immediate action, specifically around the 2030 commitment. So our learning objectives today are that after this session, participants will gain an understanding of the 2030 commitment and the key components to target and achieve within their firms. Participants will sign up for the 2030 commitment. You'll also learn the tools necessary to report to the DDX, Design Data Exchange, as a part of the reporting component of the 2030 commitment, and participants will develop and maintain a firm-wide sustainability action plan. So the people behind doing that are myself, helping with some other mentors in the second half of today's session, and our panel of speakers is from all over the country, starting with Angela or Angie Brooks of Brooks plus Scarpa Architects. She is a recognized leader in the field of environmental and social equity design and is responsible for firm development in the area of housing and policy, leading the firm's sustainable initiatives and overall design staff management. Her firm has received over 50 major design awards, including the National and State Architecture Firm Award from the American Institute of Architects in 2010 and the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt National Design Award in 2014. Andrea Love is joining us from Payette, where she is a principal and director of building science. She integrates building performance into all of their work and leads their national and internal research efforts. She was the principal investigator of the AIA Upjohn Research Grant focused on thermal bridging and led the development of Payette's glazing and winter comfort tool. She recently served on the AIA Coat Advisory Group and currently serves on the board of Boston Society of Architects and the AIA Board of Knowledge Committee. Jason Hainline from Dakewells Architecture serves as the firm's sustainability director, elevating the pursuit of performance with all projects within the firm, and is focused on the elegant marriage of sustainability and design excellence. Jason's experience includes federal facilities, public and private institutions, retail developments, and low and high-rise offices, laboratories, and educational buildings. Jason is a practiced facilitator and a former member of the USGBC's lead faculty and often teaches high-performance design-related lecture courses at the architecture program at Drury University. And lastly, we're joined by Terry Dreyer of Nano LLC here in New Orleans. With degrees in both architecture and interior design, over 30 years of experience within the profession, and utilizing her experience and leadership, Terry is the design and management force behind Nano's projects. In addition to being the founding partner of Nano LLC, Terry currently serves as the AIA New Orleans chapter president. Her comprehensive design experience incorporates projects of many magnitudes, successfully designing and managing many historic renovation projects valued at over $25 million. And I will also say, from my own experience, working with Terry on this committee has been an absolute pleasure. But without further ado, we have Angie Brooks joining us through the digital world to kick us off. And don't panic, the first minute of this video doesn't have sound.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Brooks, the principal of Brooks plus Scarpa Architects, and I'm so happy to kick off your 4-day symposium called Rising. We're at a tipping point, both socially and environmentally. I think there's a momentum that is less about the individual and more about the world around you, which is really great. And I wanted to highlight 2 things. The first thing is that design can really make a social impact. And this is already happening across diverse disciplines like fashion, product design, landscape design, and digital platforms for creatives like Kickstarter. And I just came off the Cooper Hewitt National Design Awards, and it was really exciting to hear about these people from different disciplines talking about the same thing. The second point I want to make is that design is really critical to meet our climate change goals. And I believe our profession is best suited to provide solutions for a lot of the challenges that we are facing, from sea level rise on the East Coast to fires on the West Coast. And we really can't wait for policy to mandate that we do it. We really have to lead and educate others. This is a 4-day symposium focused on different ways that you can be effective, from immediate things you can do right away, to specific tools you can use and share, to the ecology or vernacular of a place, to the long view, which is what will the world look like in 50 years. Some of you may know that I was the National AIA co-chair in 2018 and 2019, and the AIA adopted the Resolution for Urgent and Sustained Climate Action. And this was to engage the profession, and it passed almost unanimously, but which is really awesome. But what you don't probably know is that when I was chosen to join the group in 2016, I had not yet signed the 2030 commitment. I did not know that I needed to do that to submit for a top 10 award. And I really did not know the exact science of how dire the situation really is. The codes in California were very stringent, and they still are, but our studio did not really have anything formalized at that time. So we quickly pivoted to get on board with formalizing how we could meet the 2030 commitment goals. So I don't believe that I know everything, and you shouldn't believe that you know everything, and you should always stay curious. Surround yourself with people like you, support and learn from each other, keep learning, and others around you are going to follow your lead. Also, failure can pave the way to success, and the key is to learn from it. You are all leaders in your field because you are here. And you're actually a new kind of leader, someone committed to something bigger than yourself, a change agent. And I want to thank you for being an inspiration to others. Have a great symposium.
Hi, so my name is Andrea Love, and I'm a principal and director of building science at Payette, like Kelsey mentioned. Let me just pull up my presentation. So you can all see it now. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 2030 commitment and what it's meant for our firm culture and how we've really been able to use that to sort of leverage and push design. So as hopefully you all know, here's where we are in terms of trying to get to these climate goals. And when we think about the 2030 commitment, I feel like this is what people usually think about, these targets stepping down in terms of the reduction of overall energy use intensity. And when we look at our firm's energy usage over the years, we've been managing to do pretty close to the targets, but not quite. We've done a little better on incorporating projects with energy models, which I think we're pretty proud of, but haven't quite reached that 100% yet. But the thing that I think actually is the most interesting about the program, and the part that I wanted to actually focus a little bit more on, is the Sustainability Action Plan, which is less of, I mean, the other part is certainly important too, obviously, but it's about your firm culture, how you design, how you deliver your projects, and sort of how we're going to try to institutionalize this. And so this is Payette. We're 170 people located in one office on one floor, back when we all shared a workspace and didn't wear masks everywhere, in Boston. And our values are really focused on kind of an attention to craft, embedding nature, particularly in the sort of institutional work that we do, focus on reduction of energy in our buildings, and embracing of the complexity of our typologies. So while we're a fairly large firm, we have a pretty narrow focus. So we just work on academic science buildings and healthcare. And these are two of the most energy intensive typologies there are out there. And so we feel there's a particular urgency, given our work and what we focus on really making sure that we drive down the energy use intensity of these. And so when we joined the 2030 commitment, we really started focusing on how do we build energy literacy. So rather than thinking of sustainability as something where you take the building that you had and you slap on some sunshades and solar panels, what does that really mean as kind of an integrated thing where everything is working together, the facade and the mechanical system and the overall performance. And so part of this is making how we talk about energy part of our lexicon of our work, right? So this is our image of our office. Each major project has an alcove, and in each alcove we have posted the energy use intensity. So that it's become something that we understand about a project, just like its location, its square footage, and other kind of basic parameters. Everybody knows and can start to see what the different energy use intensities. And because we have a pretty narrow typology, it actually generates a lot of interesting competition, but also conversations of why one project may be less or more than another. And it also is about how we talk about all of our work externally. So this is just a screenshot of our website, but for all of our projects, good, bad, or otherwise, we share that energy use intensity just like we do the other kind of project statistics, because we think that it's important to kind of understand about our work. But we also try to leverage this data to continue to improve, right? So one of the things that we've been doing is starting to look at, the engineering firms that we work most frequently with, how do they compare to, within a typology? So it's an apples to apples comparison. How are we doing? Are we getting the same performance out of each of these, and actually being able to leverage this data that we're collecting to make more informed decisions? And one of the key parts to really trying to push design is integrating this information into our design work, so that as we're making decisions, whether it be something like the depth and overhang of a sunshade or the sill height for a facade, we can start to understand things like its impact on occupant comfort and glare, the quality of the space in daylight, the peak loads, which are really important because that often drives the cost of systems, as well as what systems we may or may not be able to use, as well as the overall energy use intensity. And so I lead the building science group, and this is really what we spend a lot of our time focused on, is how do we kind of integrate into design to make more informed decisions. So one example of this would be a project that we recently finished at Northeastern University, the Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Complex, where we won this from a design competition that had a very kind of ephemeral rendering. We thought maybe it was a double skin facade. It's a Northeast cold climate that seemed like maybe it'd be the right approach. But early energy modeling actually, right when we won the competition, led us to understand that actually solar gain was the biggest driver because of the southwest orientation. And so focusing on having a sunshade as opposed to a double skin facade was kind of an early inflection in the arc of that design process that was informed by the energy modeling and by this integration and performance. And then we had a very integrated back and forth design process so that actually it becomes so integrated that when it was proposed that we value engineer a third of the sunshades, we went back and reran our analysis. We gave that information to the engineers. They reran their analysis. And what we found was it was actually more expensive to increase the cooling tower than it was to keep the sunshades, because we had this integrated approach. We really were just starting to shift money from the mechanical system to the facade and able to kind of protect both the design intent and the performance. And I would say this integrated design really, it becomes integral to how we do our work. So this is a project that we recently finished at the Amherst New College Science Center. And a key sculptural element of the building, which the rest of the campus is kind of up the hill, so looks down on this roof, are these roof monitors. But the roof monitors aren't just a sculptural element that kind of are both, on the underside as part of the commons, but also above as part of the skyline of the project. But it's a key part of the sustainability, supporting a south-facing PV panel, a north-facing skylight, as well as a radiant and convective panel. And it becomes an overall part of our strategy for how we really reduce the energy use intensity of this project, where we can trap the heat to make a solar chimney while using these radiant floors and natural ventilation and displacement ventilation, but also using the sustainability element to become a key, a signature part of this space, right? Because signature design element are these roof monitors. And the other part of our work that we've really been focused on is doing internal research, right? So the building science group tries to answer questions that we see coming up in design with sort of bespoke modeling for each project. But then there are often things that come up over and over again that we may not have time in the project process to really address. And so we take that time, we like to take that time in our research projects to try to step outside that timeline that a typical project may be going along, answer those questions knowing that it'll pay dividends going forward. So one example of this is a research project that we did looking at glazing and winter comfort. This is probably not something that's particularly relevant to New Orleans, but it's much more relevant to me in Boston, where what we found was actually if you have a lot of glass, you typically needed to put in perimeter heat, but through through kind of smart design, we could actually design a facade that would be comfortable. Maybe it's investing in triple glazing, or even just how you do the geometry that would enable us to eliminate that. And so now we have a tool that enables us to make the case that actually it's more cost effective to invest in that high performing facade than to pay for the perimeter heat and the piping and everything associated with that, which also has obviously the added maintenance as well as the embodied carbon associated with it and the operational carbon for running it. And so it's enabled us, and we really do these because it's about affecting design of our practice. And so we were able to occasionally have triple glazing in our projects, but now it's become the default because we're able to explain and demonstrate why our designs are thermally comfortable without it. And as Kelsey mentioned, we were fortunate enough to get the Upjohn Research Grant in 2012, focusing on thermal bridging. And again, we really do these research projects to inform design. So one example of this would be at the Northeastern project. We had a born-formed concrete wall that actually the previous design team had done at the project just before this. And what we found in the thermal bridging research project was that it had an R4. Much less than what we'd had anticipated because of the thermal bridging. And so using what we learned in that research project, we were able to come up with something that had closer to an R24, dramatically reducing the heat flow. And this, as I said, this is really about building the literacy and changing hearts and minds. And so, this was left on my desk one day a few years back now by one of our partners where, maybe 10 years ago, this would be a detail that we might have designed. But now, thinking about thermal bridging has become so ingrained in our culture and how we approach things that when they saw this detail in a magazine, they were just aghast at this kind of what they, had thermal homicide. And the 2030 commitment is continuing to evolve to embrace things like embodied carbon. So hopefully those of you that are participating in the 2030 commitment have noticed that now we're incorporating that. We're working right now on building a direct input or import of data from tally models. And so we're really trying to, I would say, as an industry, but as a firm in particular at Payette, is try to take what we've been building with the 2030 commitment around operational carbon and leverage that to really start to think about embodied carbon and how we can take that kind of way of thinking and integrating modeling to start to apply that to life cycle assessment and really know how we can continue to push that. And so if we look back at the energy use intensity of our lab buildings over the last 10 plus years, there's two interesting inflection points. The first is this one, which is an innovation, I would say, how we design what goes into a lab building, kind of how we plan them and our mechanical approach to them. And if anyone's interested in like nerding out on lab buildings, I'm happy to talk more. But the second one I actually think is more interesting because it's when we signed the 2030 commitment and started the building science group. And that isn't an innovation necessarily in what is going in the building, but how we design the building. So that each project, by integrating in is learning from the previous one and is continuing to get a little smarter and that we can so we are pushing our energy usage further down so that now on average, we're using more than 2/3 less energy than we were 10 years ago. But at the same time, our awards have been able to go up. And so I think, as Angie was mentioning, this sort of embracing of design excellence by the AIA to include sustainability and building performance, I think we would very much agree with. It's, they're not a choice of one or the other, but they're really the one and the same, that good design can be high performing design. And it's because of this that we were fortunate enough to win 4 AIA COTE Top 10 awards in 4 years, really embracing this fusion of design and performance. And that we were awarded the 2019 Firm Award for our focus on the fusion of design and performance. Thank you. And I'm now going to hand it off to Jason.
Hey, everybody. Let's see if I can get shared here. Okay, so our terminator is really bad. I don't know if that will have much relevance. We'll see as we go on here. And we're a bit of a different practice from both Angie and Andrea. We're a small to mid-sized firm located in Springfield, Missouri. We have a small office in Kansas City. And Springfield is essentially, a modest-sized Midwestern big town. So not really a city in and of itself. And oftentimes the challenge that we're dealt with here is that the attitude tends to be good enough is good enough. And part of the reason for that good enough is good enough mentality largely comes from this rural agricultural demographic where you're often forced to make do with what you have. And a lot of the people that we work with as clients and even our own staff come from this kind of background. You have a financial conservatism out of necessity. And so budgets are tight, and thereby that attitude of good enough is good enough tends to kind of percolate through a lot of the expectations of the projects that we're dealing with. And so for us, in starting our practice, we've long sought to make good use of what we have available, thinking about things differently, assembling them in unexpected ways that ignites renewed life. Similar to the story of Frankenstein, right? Frankenstein is not the monster, that's the doctor, but he was trying to take these disparate parts and put something together in a way that may or may not kind of work too well, but to create new life. And likewise, this artist, Giuseppe Arcimboldo, tended to create these really unique art forms back in the 1500s, where he would use a lot of very different imagery to create something completely different. And we're intrigued by that idea about trying to kind of take limited budgets, limited means, and do something extraordinary with them something unexpected. So it's more about ingenuity as opposed to innovation. And so likewise, we've approached that same mentality, not only with the idea of how we approach design, but also how we approach the conversation of sustainability and building performance within our practice, but also with the clients that we're working with. So here we are. We are one of a handful of states that yet has to adopt a statewide energy code. And in fact, it was only earlier this year that that Springfield adopted the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code. So we're in 2020 and we're working with 2012 energy code. So we're fighting kind of an uphill battle in terms of a driver to help kind of, again, impact that good enough is good enough mentality as it relates to building performance, and thereby where do people put priorities for where they spend their limited dollars with projects that we work on. With that said, what I think is interesting is that opinions statewide appear to be changing. So here's Missouri, and what you can see in the little box there is Greene County, where Springfield happens to be located. The mindset regarding global warming and thereby climate change and its persistence is changing amongst people, which has not been relatively the norm given our sort of rural agrarian background. So we tend to remain pretty optimistic about this kind of information. And that change may be in part influenced by experience, more so than reading articles and what we get from the news. And after all, we are the show me state. So this is in a tornado that hit in 2011. Some of you may be familiar with this. We're on May 22nd, and the F5 tornado ripped through Joplin, which happens to only be about 70 miles due west of Springfield. As you can see from this graph or this map, you can see the sort of, brown colored tread mark through the entire city. This happened to be one of the deadliest tornadoes in modern record keeping. And so I show this to basically exemplify the fact that the existence of climate change, its impacts on our area are real, and I think people are taking notice, and that is starting to trickle through in the work that we're doing and the clients that we're working for.
Come with me if you want to live.
So are Terminators really all that bad? We kind of adopted this mentality, both in terms of design excellence, but also in terms of building performance, that perhaps despite our clients, we needed to take a more aggressive step towards how we're approaching it and just do what we know is right and try and accomplish what we can, again, with those limited means, but trying to push the envelope as it relates to how we're addressing building performance. And so as a firm, we've been kind of on this thoughtful, albeit sometimes unintentional, approach towards challenging ourselves. So we were founded in 2004, and you see we've taken a few steps here and there with sort of sustainability successes. One that I want to point out is in 2016 is when we signed on the 2030 Challenge. At the time, we were the only firm in Springfield, let alone Southwest Missouri, to do so. And I'm pretty sure we still are the only one in Southwest Missouri. So there's a lot of work to be done amongst our colleagues. Albeit a small town or a big town, there are a lot of practicing architects, and there's a lot of room, much like New Orleans, for getting others to commit. And then the other step is just this year, we began working on our sustainability action plan. And as Andrea said, we find that to be a really significant driver for us, because what it's done for us this year is it's changed the dialogue within our firm. And that dialogue, we think, is perhaps far more important than these little successes of a LEED certified building or winning an award for building performance. It's changed how everybody in our firm is starting to think about the work that we're doing. So when we started kind of thinking about this action plan, we asked ourselves a series of questions. Do we have a moral or just a professional obligation? How do we define sustainability? And where are our priorities? Things that we've kind of loosely talked around amongst a few of us, but as we started to get a little bit more focused and dialed in on how we were going to define this for ourselves, we needed to start with these questions. And then ultimately what we've done is we've just resolved to do better. So that seems rather ambiguous. It's not to suggest that performance metrics aren't important and that we haven't defined those. It's not to suggest that we don't have specific goals and objectives, but at the end of the day, it can be rather broad and overwhelming for some. And so everybody can wrap their head around the idea of doing better. And it started with signing the 2030 challenge and just trying to say, okay, we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to do something and we're going to start there. And it took us a while to start working on that action plan. But again, as I said, that action plan has started to kind of solidify our thinking about how we're going to be a little bit more aggressive about the overall goals of the 2030 challenge. And so moving forward, what we're looking at is both our work and our business. And with our work, we have a series of things that we're making priorities, continuing to pursue 2030 targets with all of our projects. After all, we've only got about 10 years to go to try and hit those. Improving our reporting process. So we've been reporting for a few years now, but by all means, we're not getting it necessarily as accurate or right as we'd like to see it. Developing a more conscientious workflow to incorporate analysis and decision-making, starting to have a conversation about how we account for embodied carbon. And something that we've been really interested in is starting to collect post-occupancy data so we can see what it tells us about not only our projects, but how we can influence future work. And then, start to have a conversation about how we touch on the AI Code of Ethics with conversations with our clients. And then in our business practices, continuing to finish up and refine that sustainability action plan, look at our own space, our resources, how we look beyond our projects in terms of a carbon footprint. And again, how can we advocate beyond our own employees, but to the other firms that are in our city and our region. So as an example, or backing up, it's a process is the conclusion. So we're still working on this. We have yet to figure it out. And I think as Angie Brooks said, we don't know everything and far from it, but we're trying to kind of learn with each project. And as an example of just a couple of projects, this is a small school. The entire district is in a couple of buildings adjacent to each other. And they have limited means. And so they had a need for a cafeteria, a performing arts, and a gym, but they didn't have the budget for all three of those. In fact, they barely had the budget for one. And so how do we think about using those limited resources differently and put all of that into one space? And so we didn't achieve significant energy goals here, but we were able to really aggressively seek daylighting opportunities within this space and learn from that in terms of how it influences other projects. And likewise, this Welcome Center for Missouri State University actually started out with a stated goal of hitting the 2030 targets. And in fact, the university was on board and supporting that. And somewhere along the way, because of budgets and schedules, that goal lost focus. But the thing that didn't lose focus was trying to maximize daylighting and sun control. And part of that was because of the opportunity to incorporate that from a strategic design standpoint. But we've got to get better at establishing a goal, measuring those goals throughout design, and then determining where we end up. And then finally, larger projects that we've been fortunate to work on. Again, a school in a rural area. This project has probably by far met some of our upfront goals and objectives from a daylighting standpoint and energy performance standpoint. But this is a project that we actually submitted for COTE Top 10. And as we are going through that process, we learned a whole lot about what we kind of missed the mark on in terms of the intentionality of the program. And so as we continue on, we're trying to kind of learn from these steps and continue to pursue the objectives of the 2030 challenge and beyond, and challenging ourselves. So I want to end really quick with this. We use this a lot when we talk about design. This is the paperclip developed by Johann Bauer in 1899. And one of the things we talk about is how many things you can do with a paperclip. There's like hundreds of things that you can do with a paperclip, from acting as a zipper or resetting an iPhone. The point is that the paperclip is an incredibly simple and versatile and quite frankly, kind of a beautifully designed object. But to get to it, it takes a machine like this. This happens to be the patent that Fowler submitted. It's incredibly complex. So this very complex, intricate machine creates this very simple and elegant element. And so that's design for us, is that it's a complex process in order to try and achieve a simplistic result. And likewise, this effort towards sustainability or building high performance buildings is also complex. It's a complex understanding in order to try and implement so that the result is really simple and successful. So this dichotomy between complexity, which takes work, and simplicity, which results in restraint. And that's all I've got. So I'm going to hand it over to Terry.
Thank you. Hold on a moment and I'll share my screen. There we go. So the presentations that we just had were phenomenal, and I want to say to all of our guests, thank you so much. I'm taking a different approach in that I'm going to, I guess in a weird way, dumb it down and talk about how a small firm can make a lasting change, as we just signed up this year. And I think that it's really important to show the different levels of scale of how this can be achieved and the small steps that we can take to make it happen. So this is a project, actually, that's our own in-house project. We actually bought a building where Mr. Andrew Young and Martin Luther King actually spoke at 2401 Bienville. And this is our first project that we're going to be acquiring the AIA 2030 Challenge to. We start off with a sustainability action plan. I think the previous guest talked a little bit about it. What I wanted to make a statement about in reference to the sustainability action plan is that it is not difficult. For small firms, you think of all the time and the energy that goes into providing this sustainability action plan. Incredible firms like Flato, Payette, and all the rest have actually been wonderful, and it is shared on the AIA website for the 2030 Challenge, and you can use those as precedents to make your firm's sustainability action plan. It talks about a firm commitment, design and approach, evaluation and reporting, outreach and advocacy, training and education, operations and outlook, and breaks down for you how you can answer those questions to create the plan, if you will. I'm a firm believer, as Nano is, on the idea that if you build it or if you write it, it's a plan and it will come to fruition. And I believe that for this sustainability action plan, as you write it and you talk about how it's going to be infiltrated into your firm, how you're going to use it in quality control, and how you're going to use this as a business development tool, also in justification for your design, it's hugely important. The other thing is to actually setting the goals of immediate, short-term, and long-term, which I think are really important as well, so that you have a small mission and a larger mission and a long-term. The case study that we are looking at, like I said, was 2401 Bienville. It originally was the Central Congregational Church. It was built by an assembly formed in 1872, comprised of African-American parishioners. Construction began in 1944. It was designed by the first African-American and New Orleans native, a licensed architect to be licensed in the state of Louisiana, a graduate of Xavier University, also graduated from Harvard GSD and the University of Chicago. His name is Lucien Rousseff. Notable members of the former congressman and the civil rights activists were Andrew Young, who worked with Martin Luther King, who did several speeches there, and also activist Walter Young. Martin Luther King also attended several services there. I think that's important to note. It was damaged in Hurricane Katrina, significant historical presence. And the interior of church features spaces of two-story hall of worship and a fellowship hall. One of the other things to note is that a renovation of a building is going to decrease your energy, which is a far more amenable solution to trying to get that AIA 2030 goal than a new construction. Truly, it's just about the engineering and the energy efficiency, the energy usage of not having to build the total building. One of the things that's the easiest thing to do is the Zero tool and the Autodesk Insight. The Zero tool helps with the idea of the target, right? So in using, I think Andrea Love talked about it a bit, where the target EUE energy, energy usage intensity is 39. And that number was based upon a 70% reduction. In the Zero tool, all you really need to do is the gross floor area of the building that you either have or that you're potentially going to do, or build if it's new construction, and then have the actual area in which you're going to build it, like New Orleans, Louisiana. And it gives us your 39 energy usage intensity number. And that's the target that you want to hit. We used a 70% reduction, which is the 2018 model, which Andrea showed us the little pretty asterisk of red in between the years. And that's the one that we targeted to use. Then you take that information and you plug it into the Autodesk Insight. And that one, we just did the first step, which is establishing the EIU baseline and target for reduction goal. Then you apply low to no cost passive design strategies. The two that you have here are lighting and then northern wall exposure. Because we're down in New Orleans, you're going to want a maximum of lighting, of natural light, to come from the northern side of your building. We applied those two items alone, and we went from 127 to actually we plugged the original in and we got 65.7. And then actually when doing the next step, we actually were able to achieve a 24, which is massive. The 40 we got to by applying the HVAC and mechanical systems and technology and efficient systems. And then at the end, we did the passive solar, the incorporating of the renewable energies, which is the solar panels, which we actually ended up putting on the Hume Center, which is an old child care center where it was a nice flat roof. We were able to put the solar panels in, and we went all the way down to 24.1, which is huge. And to be honest with you, these are steps that we are already inputting into our projects and work here in New Orleans. And I'm sure a lot of the rest of the architects and the members of the AIA are doing. But what this tool does is it provides you the opportunity to do quantitative research and provide quantitative data to your clients to show them that the placement of that window is important for these reasons. Doing in high efficiency HVAC actually gets you here to that 40.8. And these ideas and strategies are important for us to have a better quality and lower greenhouse gases and carbon neutral building. So we're on the beginning on this journey, and all the people that are listening, I really want you to take note, because it's important to realize that, I guess in a weird way, if I can do it and if Nano can do it, I know everyone else can. What I wanted to bring up is some of the things that are really important. The urban built environment is responsible for 75% of the annual global GHG emissions. Buildings alone account for 39%. Eliminating these emissions is the key to addressing climate change. And what does that mean for us in New Orleans, right? We are experiencing more hot days. So how do we deal with heat transmission? How do we deal with HVAC issues, air conditioning issues? And our seas are rising. That's the next idea, is what are we going to do? Because we're looking at between a 5 to 10 foot rise by 2100 if we don't do something. The the 2030 challenge has been adopted by 80% of the top 10 and 65% of the top 20 architecture and engineering plans in the United States. The AIA, ASHRAE, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the federal government, and many other organizations and state and local governments and agencies have adopted this challenge. I think it's incumbent upon the AIA New Orleans chapter to do everything we can to sign as many people up, which was the goal, and to educate as many of us as possible so that we can go out and educate our local leaders and our clients to have better performing buildings. I think New Orleans can be a massive catalyst, especially in the southern regions, for coming up with solutions. So I am, I guess in a weird way, desperate, if you will, but excited and to be on this venture and thrilled to have been able to bring these national and international firms to the table today and for the month of November. This actually gives you a small nano timeline trajectory for sustainability. Just to highlight the end of this so that we can move to the next step, which is the arrow at the bottom right. I was fortunate to work for HOK for 10 years prior to Nano. And oddly enough, I was introduced to sustainability at that time where I actually had to, twist my arm, was able to go to France and Italy and north of Africa to ensure that the rainforest was actually being revegetated and regenerated, and to ensure that the quarries that we were using for the 3 million square feet of stone was actually going to come from different varieties of the quarries, so we did not have to actually eliminate an entire quarry, similar to what happened with IMP at the Louvre. And I'll show some pictures up there in 1993 to 1997. Then from graduating in 1999 with my husband and business partner and our quality control studio manager, Christine Covilla, in 2000, we formed Nano. And one of the things that we did when we formed the company is we actually formed it unlicensed and as a design build firm. So everything we designed, we built, and everything we built, we designed. Which was great, because what we ended up finding out is we had a rule, which was there was no wood left in the trash pile, right? So not only did we build it, but we then started crafting and designing furniture and for all the different projects that we had put in, winning many awards, Green Project Awards, honor awards. And I don't think we knew that sustainability was a critical component, because we knew that we were part of the changing of the environment and the neighborhood and the sites that we were starting to develop or renovate, in particular Magazine Street. We have a lot of projects down that street, and which was a catalyst for making the neighborhoods sturdier, stronger, and more friendly. But as we grew in the last 10 years, we started to get much larger projects and started to realize not only the waste, but the opportunity that we have to create and to expand upon our mission statement, which is detail at every scale, where it doesn't matter what the size of the project is, and it doesn't matter the program of the project, but if the system and the process that we believe in stays in place, then that is that is who we are, and that's what we want to express in our projects. So in some of the projects in the most recent times, a perfect example would be Lake Conroe project. We were actually able to build a beautiful home, which had triple glazing and low emissions, and the heat transmission was, I think, like 30. And we started recognizing also in Il Mercato, which is a massive historic renovation project on Magazine Street, that there was an additional need to quantify how I can do the buy-in. And then as I became president president-elect really in 2019, AIA National put out a huge reach for, and they've been doing this for years. We started realizing that we need to become a bigger force and not just think about who Nano is, but think about how Nano can affect, or how we can affect change, similar to the previous guests. And so we first signed up in 2020, and thanks to Kelsey and Javier and Waleed and Z Smith, we signed up, and we are now starting to quantify and list our buildings. So this is 2401 is one of many, and we're actually getting ready to start a residence at 644. We've also got a program in place for our employees to either be well certified or LEED certified. And we're providing a path for certification, like I said, to all employees. And we're really proud to be here. And I want to take an opportunity to say thank you so much to all of our guests and Kelsey and Javier, because at the beginning of 2020, prior to COVID and prior to the horrible social injustice that is going on, I had a commitment to get as many firms as possible to sign up for the AIA 2030 Challenge, so New Orleans could actually be a leader in this. And I am grateful for everyone who has signed up for the month of November. I'm sorry. Let me close down. So I'm going to now hand that off to Javier.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for those incredible presentations. We do have a few comments right now, but if you have any further questions or comments, please drop them in the Q&A section below. But for the moment, we have some questions that we're asking for you, Andrea, asking about the specific tools and programs that you guys use at Payette, and specifically, are they proprietary?
Sure. So I had a few different tools in that I was showing, but the ones that came out of our research project, the embodied carbon one for facades and the one on glazing, those are ones that came out of our research. So we did develop them, but we believe that because we built on research that was being done elsewhere, that we should share our research. And hopefully then all of you who have good research share it with us, and then we can design better buildings as well. And we'll all do better. And so they're all free. And anyone can use them on our website. If you go to payette.com, there's like the little hamburger, and under there's a section called tools, and you can find them there. And you can feel free to use them. And then the other one that I had shown, or some of the other analysis, all basically leverages Honeybee, and Ladybug, combine those there, which are plugins for Rhino. They're free. And the interface that we use is called the Design Explorer Lite. So it takes, again, it's a free interface that you can kind of run. If you can run parametric simulations, you can upload the data and the graphics, and it kind of helps generate the website and the interface. It takes a little bit of knowledge, but not anything overly, like you don't need to know how to program or anything like that. So it is something that there's probably a bit of a learning curve for someone who wants to use it, but it is free and it's open to anyone who would be interested in trying to use it.
Excellent. We also have another question that is more general. How do you do all of this and integrate it? And I want to open it up more to all the panelists. More, how do you do all this work? Specifically, how do you do it in your office? Because Jason, I love the slide that you had on the paperclip versus the machine. It also not only takes that machine, but also takes people knowledgeable about how to run the machine to do such a thing. So what is your approach for each of you, having different size offices? Do you guys bring people with that expertise, or do you guys train within in-house, or do you guys have an enabler, sustainability enabler per team or per office, or can you speak to that?
Sure. I'm happy to go first. So I would say we have a building science team that are 4 people that are kind of dedicated to focusing on this and kind of integrating into all of our projects. We do try to leverage the capacities within teams. So if there's someone on a team that has either a pretty good background in building science or knows some simulation, then we might either work with them to help set up some analysis and have them do it if that makes sense, or we might do it. Sometimes we'll set up scripts, and then we that way it's kind of set up, and then teams can kind of change out different iterations so that we can kind of enable them to do it in real time. But I would say the vast majority we mostly do in the building science group, and that's kind of how we've set up our model. And
just for context, how many people are in your office versus that specific group?
Yeah, so there's 170 total. I mean, that includes everyone from finance and IT, but so we're a 170 person office with 4 building scientists that work on it.
What about you, Jason?
So it's not necessarily as organized. I mean, as a smaller firm, we don't have necessarily people who are just dedicated to doing analysis per se. And it is one of the things that we're trying to work on. We're trying to work on developing a meaningful workflow so that it doesn't just have to funnel through one or two people who have, more of the skill set than not. We're trying to do more in-house, and we've been kind of on that trajectory for a number of years where we're investing in tools and how to use them and how to then incorporate them into our workflow and get good at using them and understanding what it's telling us. But there are times where we're also hiring consultants. Again, that's maybe a matter of our size, and we're all, architects. We don't have any engineers, and so there are projects where perhaps it's either the goals that are set by us or our clients, or the budget allows for us to bring on a consultant to do more detailed energy analysis. So it's a case by case, and we're all trying to be involved throughout the process.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. What about you, Terry? Do you guys have a specialized person in the office? Do you guys have a team? How do you guys work through those things?
So we've now dedicated 2 people in the office. What we're trying to do right now is figure out how to, I think probably similar to Jason, is trying to figure out, because we have a strategy where every set of drawings goes through this quality control person or people. And then how do we take that quality control person and then add another level where it's now going to be the 2030 person. And they're going to look at the project based upon that criteria. And we're trying to figure out how to make that flow better. So that's what we have set up. We have one person. The other thing is we are trying to figure out how to equate this in a financial way, right? So that if I get a client that's a buy-in, but it's a municipal client, how does that fee structure work? Or do I just not deal with that and I'm just going to do it? And right now what we're doing is we're not even dealing with it. We're just doing it so that we can get better at doing it. And then I've got to figure out, how, which talks about the ethics that I think Jason brought up earlier, is like, there's a moral imperative in our view, right? we have to do something. And I think we're succinctly engaged. We have this good opportunity and we're in the right place as architects. So.
Gotcha. And for context, again, the size of your firm versus the 2 people that are.
Oh, we're 11. We're 12 people.
12. Okay. Sorry, and Jason, did you mention that? I don't know if I missed the size of your office.
We're 24 people.
Yeah, and I asked that just because we have another question. Somebody asked, they have a firm, 1 to 4 person firm. Is the 2030 challenge amenable and doable for, a firm that size? And what would you recommend for somebody much smaller?
So that's an interesting question. And I sat in on I guess as a national AIA small firm committee a few months ago, and much the same way as this. And there are a number of people, sole practitioners, and part of what I think is a common challenge for firms, even our size, is time, right? Because in our firm, we're all doing everything. So in other words, we don't have people that are just drafting. We're all designers, and we're all intimately involved in project development. And so how do I, as a project manager, also carve out time to do daylighting analysis for a project? And it's a struggle, and that's part of that workflow aspect that I was talking about. And so I think for those smaller firms, one or 5 or 8, that's part of the challenge, but I think it's definitely doable. I would say that 23 challenges for any size firm. It's just a matter of how you start integrating it, and that's been part of this this dialogue that we've been having. And so I guess for a single person firm, it's how do you have a dialogue with yourself about what your action plan is going to consist of in order to try and achieve goals. And I guess what our motto is, how do we do better? And so what's that dialogue that the smaller firms have amongst themselves to do better?
Gotcha. Thank you for that. We do have one last question. We're running a little long on the Q&A, but I do want to ask this important question. What are some ways you've found to successfully engage your clients and get them on board with potentially more expensive or time-consuming design explorations? What do you do when a client doesn't start off interested in participating in sustainable certifications or design practices? Andrea, you want to start with that?
I mean, I would say that we view the analysis and the work that I do is just built into part of our fee and how we work. So it's not kind of viewed as something that we need to convince the clients to do, because we include that as part of how we work and how we build our fee. You could spend, a lot of time figuring out a detail, and we kind of feel and see the value in investing the time, that the hours and the fee that we have in the design process into doing this early in the design. If we have a client that doesn't, we're fortunate, we do mostly institutional work. So the vast majority of our clients, particularly on the academic science side, have carbon goals for their campuses to reduce carbon emissions and things like that. And so they're kind of on board. But I spend a lot of time when I'm trying to convince clients that may not be as on board of trying to figure out what motivates them. Because the nice thing about sustainability is there's so many benefits, right? And so, like, for example, if I'm working with a hospital that maybe doesn't care about climate change, right? That may be why I want to do something. I want to reduce energy use, and carbon emissions, but they don't care. Or it's not a big driver for them. I try to figure out what motivates them and then just pivot to kind of focus around that, right? So one of the things that, I've learned is that hospitals care a lot about patient satisfaction surveys. That's what actually determines their rankings. And so if you can sell something, yes, a chilled mean might save energy, but if it's more comfortable and it will give you, and it's quieter and it would increase patient satisfaction, they're willing to invest in something like that, right? Or reduce staff turnover or lower first costs. Everybody always loves that, right? And so the nice thing about sustainability is it often has many benefits, right? In terms of occupant experiences and other things. And so as much as you can try to, I think, make things about what they value, I think the more successful you tend to be, rather than trying to project your values on them. I don't know if that entirely answers the question, but
yeah, that's very insightful, actually. Jason, do you want to try to tackle that same question?
I would echo what Andrea said. It's trying to kind of understand what's important to the client and figure out then, how can you respond to that from a standpoint that either improves building performance or occupant comfort and well-being. And you're not talking to them in that context. You're trying to, put it in the context that they find value. And we've found that there's always an application as it relates to, sustainability in the broad sense, to put it in that context. We haven't been very successful at getting photovoltaics on projects. And that's because that does sort of come into, a sort of different realm of conversation. But with clients that are working with limited budgets, talking about operating costs, that hits home for them. And so energy efficiency then becomes something that we can start pursuing. And then we use tools as design, or, analysis as a design tool, much like, Revit or Rhino is anymore. So daylight analysis, energy analysis, is a design decision-making tool, and we can use that to help inform our clients as to why we're making certain design decisions, which is not just about performance, but it's also about good design.
Tara, do you have anything to add to that?
I think dittoing both what they said is that in the acknowledgement that your client well enough to know what pushes their buttons, what is it that they are intrigued in, whether it's patient satisfaction, whether it's energy. There are so many valuable components to this challenge and to sustainability that's, to me, I feel like we are remiss if we do not tell our clients and educate them. The other thing that Jason just talked about was I have a project that's coming up, the next one for a residence, where the client loves sustainability and he's all into engineering. But I have another client that I'm hoping to talk into, and I'm starting those conversations, who's totally fascinated by solar panels and solar energy and how we can find other forms of energy. So I'm using those interests as we interview them for programming, and then I can make design decisions based upon quantitative analysis, which I think is a phenomenal part. And actually, I think Z Smith talked about it in the last couple of sessions that we've been talking to it under the committee. You know, this is more of a design tool, and I think we need to push it forward. So I'm just in the beginning, but I'm talking about it to everybody, that's for sure. So.
Gotcha. Well, thank you everybody for those wonderful questions, and thank you to our panelists for those wonderful answers as well. I believe that Aaron has dropped the link for the next session, the breakout rooms, and I don't know if Kelsey,
Yeah, I'm here.
So let us know what the plan is.
Yeah, so you guys should have this all tracked in your email from your registration. You should have received 2 Zoom links. One was for the webinar, and the other is for the mentor sessions, in which we'll have breakout groups where we'll have some more time with one-on-one. A lot of the questions we were seeing, your mentors will be able to answer, and it'll be a little more catered to your firm size as well. So we're going to go ahead and end this webinar. The link is in the chat. We'll give you a minute to follow that. And then if not, go through your email and find that second Zoom link for the mentor sessions, and we'll see you there shortly. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
See you in a minute.
All right, bye.